like jinn, which you don't see but you know because of the Quran talks about them, and anything else that is mentioned in the Quran or in the Hadith, in the prophetic narrations. And the second type is what we physically see. That's animals, birds, human beings, and anything and everything in between. Allah has put us on earth and made us human beings, and that itself is the beginning of this topic. Remember that when Allah chose to create Adam, and start mankind, alayhi salam, Allah already had worship happening. There was no void in worship. Even so much worship was being done that the angels questioned it. If you remember in the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, when Allah said to the angels, made an announcement that إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, I am going to make a representation, appointed representation on this earth. What did the angels say? أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَن يَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ وَيُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ? Are you going to put on earth a creation that is going to spread corruption and spread bloodshed? Allah said to them, أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُ, I know you don't know. But the angels said, Oh Allah, they questioned Allah, which tells us they had intellect. Because they were not restricted to speech, they could speak. And for a person or a being to speak, they require intellect. This is why animals do not speak. And the angels, not only did they speak, they spoke based on their experience of the people of the past. That is why they objected. They said about the people of the past, about the different types of jinn in creation, some Ibn Kathir and others have mentioned, there was a group called Al-Hinn wal-Bin. They were a type of creation that were on earth that were destroying everything, causing corruption everywhere. So Allah destroyed them. So based on their knowledge of that past incident, they then questioned Allah. Will you create on this earth such a being that is going to cause corruption and bloodshed, referring to the people that did it before? وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. While you already have fulfilled this desire of worship through us. Us angels, we are worshiping, we are praising you, but we are not doing anything wrong. Despite that, Allah said, أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُ, I know why I'm creating them, you don't know. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam alayhi salam, He created him from dirt. And وَنَفَخَ فِيهِ مِن رُوحِ, Allah had blown into him and he existed. When the ruh, when the spirit was given into Adam alayhi salam, Allah said to the angels, bow to him all. And they all bowed, as you know, except Shaitan. When they bowed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained to them why this being has superiority over you all. So Allah said to the angels, tell us the names of these things, yani birds, trees, what are these things? They said, Subhanak, la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. Oh Allah, we have no knowledge except what you have taught us. So we don't know any of this. Then Allah said to Adam alayhi salam, Adam, أنبئهم بأسمائهم. Adam, you tell them about the names of these things. So Adam, he started speaking. That's a bird, that's this type of bird, that's this, and going on, and he's explaining all of these things. That moment where Allah had given him a set of skills, intellectual set of skills, made him the greatest creation. So even before you talk about logic, philosophy, you need to understand how important and how it is relevant to a believer, to a human being. Allah has put on this earth your value because of this. Yani, what it means is look at the opposite. To understand something, in Arabic they have a rule, they say mafhumul mukhalafa. To understand something, look at the opposite. If you do not utilize your brain and you do not benefit through that intellect Allah has granted you, then you have wasted everything. So number 2, why in the Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about human beings? Allah says, for example, hum kal an'am bal hum adall. Allah talks about those people who disbelieve. Allah resembles them to animals. And specifically al-an'am, which are grazing animals like cows, cattle, sheep, goats, lamb. Why did Allah say they're like them? Because those animals, they eat, they drink, they go to the washroom. They have offspring and they sleep. And they live in that cycle. They hunt for their food, they eat, they feed, and they live in this cycle. And then what happens? They continue this constant cycle and die. But they are fulfilling their function at 100%. They are not expected at anything but that. Eat, feed your offspring, go to the washroom, hunt when you need, and sleep and die. They are fulfilling that cycle. Why are they fulfilling that cycle? Because they don't have intellect. That is the only reason. They see, they taste, they hear, and they touch. They have the senses. But the intellect is absent. And because of that, even though they are doing absolutely the basic things of existence, they are still considered as fulfilling their function. But when Allah talks about the disbelievers, Allah says they're like animals, belhum adal. They are worse than the animal. Why? Because you are going to work, you are going to school to go to work, you are eating your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and going to the washroom, and you are sleeping and continuing. And you have become just like an animal. But why are you worse? Because Allah has given you the intellect to be better than an animal. To utilize the mind to propel you forward, to bring you ahead, to make you utilize the mind to optimize this life that you have. And if you don't, you are worse than an animal, because an animal does not have that opportunity. So this mind that we're talking about and navigating, you have to understand, first of all, Allah has given you, this is the greatest blessing in creation. I'm not talking about within insan. Yani within all creation, the fact that you have a working mind in which you can gain information, you can convey information, and that you can utilize it is the greatest blessing on this existence. That is the single one thing that has separated you from angels. Even though the angels are doing everything, praying, they're doing tawaf, they're doing all of that. But the separation between you and Allah has made you fi ahsani taqweem. The greatest stature of all creation is the mind. And that mind, if it is corrupt, everything is corrupt. And we will talk about that. And that's why these topics are important, because it's connecting us to how to navigate this mind. So now, after talking about how important the mind is, we are going to talk about information and some preliminary things that we need to understand. The most basic way human beings have received information is through their natural traits, which are the five senses. Okay? Who knows what the five senses are?
Eyesight, speech, hearing, feel, and taste.
Yes. So, imagine now looking back in caveman time, or if you have a child, you can see it in a baby. When someone has no information, like a child, how do they know that the fire burns them? They'll never know till they touch the fire. How do they know that this is loud unless they hear it? How do they know what you are saying without listening to it? How are they able to convey to you what they want without saying it? Right? So these five senses are the first way of getting information that every human being has. Okay? Except the ones that are obstructed for some reason or another. And for this reason, when a person ruins their objective or they miss the target in life, Allah has also talked about them not having these traits. For example, Allah says in the Quran, مثلهم كمثل الذي استوقد نارا فلما أضاءت ما حوله ذهب الله بنورهم وتركهم في ظلمات لا يبصرون صم بكم عمي فهم لا يرجعون. Allah gives an example. The example of the one, and this example is the example of the disbelievers. The example of them is the example of the one who has lit a fire. When he has lit the fire, the light has spread around everywhere. When it has spread everywhere and everything is lit up, ذهب الله بنورهم. Allah has taken away the light. وتركهم في ظلمات لا يبصرون. Now when the light is gone, they are in darkness again. This is the example of the one who disbelieves after the Quran has come to him. When Allah has given you the way out, the guidance, and you have said, I don't accept or I'm not ready yet, what has happened? You have taken the light out of your life. Now Allah gives an example. Allah talks about who they are. Allah says, Summun bukmun umyun. They are deaf, dumb and blind. Why is that reference of the senses connected to this? Even though this is a belief in the heart. Because the senses are a manifestation, or they are a representation of your ability. Somebody cannot see, you consider them already disabled. You consider them not capable. The same way Allah says that the one who has this Quran come to them and they say, I don't believe, or they reject it for whatever reason, they are considered as though they are handicapped on this earth. And in another verse of Quran, Allah says, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا كَمَثَلِ الَّذِي يَنْعِقُ بِمَا لَا يَسْمَعُ إِلَّا دُعَاءً وَنِدَاءً صُمٌّ بُكْمٌ عُمْيٌ فَهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala connects this directly to the mind, understanding. Allah says here, the example of those who disbelieve is like the example of the one who is making the crowing sound. The crowing sound, na'iq, is like a crow. Just making sounds, no purpose of the sound. إِلَّا دُعَاءً وَنِدَاءً. Not just sound is coming out. What are they? Summun bukmun umyun fahum la yaqilun. They are deaf, dumb and blind, they don't understand. Yani, they are just speaking. They are saying, I don't believe for this reason. I'm not committing to religion because of this reason. I don't know if that's correct. They're saying everything. They're just deaf, dumb. They have no idea what they're saying. Allah is the one to determine all of those things. So these 5 senses, they are in Quran connected to belief. It's interesting. It's connected to belief because the purpose of these are to eventually bring you towards belief. Otherwise, there was no purpose of them. You see what Allah is saying? Otherwise, there was no purpose of having these. If you're going to use them all and become kafir, if you're going to be a disbeliever and reject after all of these, what's the point? Allah gave it for that purpose, right? The second, so number 1 is the senses. Number 2 is the aql, the mind. So there in Arabic, there's a lot of words that come around this topic. For example, fahm. Fahm is understanding. Understanding is like when somebody says, Zaydun kharaja min al-bayt. Zayd left the house. From there you understand Zayd is not here. That's fahm. Al-fiqh. And these all words, they're similar, but they have their own miyas. They have their own specialties that separate them, distinguish them. Al-fiqh wal-faqaha. Al-fiqh is to understand the depth of something. Okay? So when something is said, you understand all the parameters of that statement. Example, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam says a hadith. In that hadith, you are understanding everything and the hadith. Meaning, for example, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam said, Kullu muskirin haram. Anything that intoxicates you is haram. What do you understand from there? Okay, everything that intoxicates is haram. And now you also understand that means by default everything that doesn't is halal. This is called al-fiqh. To understand the statement and to go past just the wordings. And to go into the deeper part of it. It's a deep level of comprehension. Al-aql. Al-aql is the mind, the logic, the intellect. And aql is basically the general understanding of experience of the human being. For example, your aql, your mind is the one that tells you, my stomach is grumbling, so I'm hungry. My feet are burning, so I'm sore. Right? I'm feeling pain in my shoulder, so something is wrong. Yani, now to make you understand the difference between the senses and the mind is that the mind says, I'm feeling pain in my shoulder, that means I need to go to a doctor. Your eyes say, I don't see the pain. Right? Your eyes say, I need to see it. Your knowledge, your mind tells you, if it's not working properly, there's a problem. Those are the two differences. So we take the senses, like seeing, feeling, all of those, and through them, with our intellect, we are able to then protect ourselves. This is the human survival instinct. When you touch fire, you know it'll burn you. Then when you see fire cook something, you know it will benefit you. Now the intellect tells you, fire is neither completely dangerous nor completely harmless. Right? And the fire now, the logic, the mind is telling you that through my experiences, using these senses, I'm able to now deduct or deduce, recognize, comprehend, when will the fire benefit me and how, and when it will harm me and how. Okay? These two things, they come together. They're different, but they come together. We use them together. And the third is that which is the third type of means of gaining knowledge, which you and I are in need of. But you and I cannot bring it into existence on our own. And that is al-wahy, divine revelation. Divine revelation's purpose is to give clear information in the ambiguous parts of existence, because the mind and senses cannot conclude on that definitively. You understanding? Al-wahy is the third type of, or third source of knowledge for mankind that is necessary because it speaks about those issues that the human mind cannot fathom, or nor can they come to a conclusive decision on. If we all take each other in a room and we have all the five senses and we have all the intellect, but one person brings up the idea, what's going to happen when I die? All of us, 100, 1,000, 1 billion, can keep thinking about possibilities. But never can we come to a conclusive reality, except through wahy. That is the only way. So wahy, even though it is coming into the spectrum of existence that is unclear, it is also the most absolute. Why? Because both, number one, the senses are limited. Why? Because you can only hear what you hear, not beyond that. You can only see what you see, not beyond that. What if you cannot see something? Then what did you do? You used your logic. When you couldn't see oxygen, your logic told you there's something happening here, right? But even there, it cannot come to answer things that are even beyond that, like death, like Allah's existence, like the purpose of this life, like how to live it the correct way. This is why wahy is the most important out of all three. And it is the only one that is absolute. Okay? It is unquestionable. And it is the only one that is above the other two, which means if the mind is gone and the senses are gone, the wahy is the only thing that matters. So if you cannot see, you must believe. If you are not able to understand certain things, you must still believe. Wahy is something that cannot be removed, or the responsibility to follow revelation cannot be removed and uplifted from mankind, except in the case where they are considered incapable, like an insane person. But for any other person who is capable, wahy, because it is of the highest level of absolute truth, it demands also the highest level of devotion. So you put it above and beyond everything else. Okay? Now, I wanted to read some ayat and tell you some things that are connected to this. Wahi, for example, also teaches us about the mind. I'll give you an example about Surah Al Imran. In the Quran, in Islam, there are many clear-cut things. They call them al-ayat al-muhkamat. Okay? What are they called? Al-ayat al-muhkamat. Okay? Al-ayat al-muhkamat are clear-cut. You don't really... لا يختلف فيه اثنان. No two people disagree. Allah says, wine is impermissible. It is intoxicating. It's clear. It's nothing difficult. Then there are things that are mutashabihat. Okay? Mutashabihat, for example, destiny. When the topic of destiny comes up, people find themselves in a loop. Allah knows everything. Allah has decided everything. But I have free choice. How? And they get in a loop. How is it working? These are called al-mutashabihat. Al-mutashabihat means those things that are obscure, unclear, not crystal clear, hard to instantly digest intellectually. The Quran, which means Islam is telling us this, that you're not crazy for thinking that this doesn't make sense to me. You know how we try to make it seem like, oh no, sami'na wa ta'na, just close the door. Don't talk about it. Don't discuss it. You shouldn't be asking these questions. The Quran itself acknowledges that many things are crystal clear. And other things are ambiguous, obscure. So your mind may get confused when you try to approach that topic. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that those verses that are mutashabihat, that are obscure, the people in their heart is deviance or the desire to deviate, they focus on that. Okay? And the people who believe, the people of knowledge, وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ, those people who have strong knowledge, what do they say? كُلُّ مِنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا. Allah knows. Those are things that the purpose of the revelation is to tell us the things we can't understand. Yani that's the actual goal, is to become so intellectually secure in oneself that you can recognize that I can press my intellect to this extent, but there is always a point where I know Allah's answered that, I don't know. There's a reason. That is actually the goal, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises that in the Quran. And the opposite, those people who say, no, I must understand everything, every little thing, even the things I cannot understand, those people, in their heart is zayg, the desire to deviate. Why the desire to deviate? They say, no, my purpose is only to learn. It's not true. Your purpose is for you to have the answer for everything. And that is impossible. You cannot have the exact answer to things that do not exist right now. Like qiyamah. Like things you have not experienced. And in knowledge, Allah has praised this type. The type that you use your senses, you use your mind, and you use wahi. These three things. When you use the revelation and these three things and you get them together, Allah has referred to this as haqq. Allah has referred to this as al-haqq. And Allah has referred to the opposite of it as al-dhann. Dhann meaning conjecting, assuming. You don't really know. So the Christians, they say that Jesus died on the cross. Right? The Muslims say Allah had raised him to heaven. Allah says in the Quran that these people لا يتبعون إلا اتباع الظن. They are following their conjecture. They're saying, no, we need to understand. We can only see it. We saw someone there that looks like it. We must say, that's what happened. Allah says, no. وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ يَقِينًا. This did not happen. We are telling you that which you are disagreeing in. Yani, Muslims and Christians are disagreeing in something in history. The Christians are saying our logic and our senses, our sight, told us that he's on this cross and died. We saw him. We knew that was him. So we believed in that. Allah said, no, these are my affairs. I am the one who made the man look like him. وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ. And I raised Isa alayhi salam to heavens. وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ يَقِينًا. And they did not kill him. They did not touch him. This, Allah says, that is haqq. This belief, Allah says, this is haqq. And the one that the Christians are saying, this is dhann. One is assumption, one is conjecture, one is the truth. Even though, and I want you to understand what I'm trying to get at, maybe it's getting complex. In the Muslim version, the two senses and the sight out the door. What is left? Wahi. The wahi, belief in the wahi is considered haqq, truth. The Christians, senses, they are relying on their senses and logic. They saw and they know that that was his physical body. Those two, they relied on and they left the haqq, the wahi. So Allah called that as a dhann. So these type of examples in the Quran, they teach us something. What do they teach us? That the wahi is above and beyond everything. Okay? Now, people say how? How can we rely on that? Right? And we say to them, it's actually very simple. Science has existed for as long as man has existed. Right? Modern day science doesn't mean it's only modern. Science has existed as long as man has existed. The study, science is the study of tests, of trial and error, of practices, of cause and effect. It is that study. That is not something that has happened in the 20th century. Science, cause and effect, and the review and the analyzing of cause and effect has existed throughout mankind's existence. Okay? And nowadays people want to say that we can, let's say Darwin theory. Everybody wants you to believe you're from a monkey, right? So they say that there's proof there. And we must rely on that. Right? This is I'm giving an example of this topic in science that has made people feel compelled to believe in it. Right? You feel compelled to believe in it. The only way you will leave it is if somebody proves something even greater. But that way to test, that method of assessment is incorrect. Why? Let's take a step back. And it's very important Muslims understand this. How do you know that the method that you are using is correct? It must constantly result in the same thing. Okay? So science, you want to say it's correct. I will ask you a question. Should you rely on science? Scientists will say yes. Right? They would say definitely yes. And you may also say, yeah, I'll rely on science. My question is, should you rely on science even though you know that science has made mistakes? Anyone who has the most basic knowledge of any science knows that there has been trial and error and there has been changes, developments, new developments that have happened throughout time. Example, they used to say that red wine was good for you. Then studies came years later, red wine is not healthy for you. They used to say that the universe is in a confined space, it does not expand. Years later, they came to the conclusion that it is expanding. Right? These themselves have proven that their current stance is not guaranteed. Why? Because if the current stance was guaranteed, then they wouldn't make mistakes before. Now let's hold the same standard to the Quran. Quran has existed for 1440, 50 years. 1450 years, I challenge anybody, anyone on this earth, and people have tried. Never once has the Quran been proven incorrect. Ever. 1400 years ago, the Quran spoke about things that you could not even fathom at that time. Example, when you go up a mountain, if you ever go hiking, what happens? You get short of breath because of the height of the mountain, right? As you move forward, the air becomes thinner. There is some pressure that comes onto the lungs. This is a natural part of science. Everyone knows, it's basic science. The Quran speaks about this 1400 years ago. They had no idea about this. Allah says, the one who he wants, who does not want for him Islam, يَجْعَلْ صَدْرَهُ ضَيِّقًا حَرَجًا كَأَنَّمَا يَصَعَّدُ فِي السَّمَاءِ. Allah says that the one who he does not want Islam for him, Allah will make his chest closed, harajan, difficult to breathe, كَأَنَّمَا يَصَعَّدُ فِي السَّمَاءِ, as though he is going up in the sky. The scholars at the time, in the 1400s, talking about Sahaba, Tabi'een, they did not understand what this meant. ضَيِّقًا حَرَجًا كَأَنَّمَا يَصَعَّدُ فِي السَّمَاءِ, as though he is going up and he is elevating. In recent times, now the ulama understand what is meant is like you are feeling constrained. Just like the example of if you were to climb a mountain. 1400 years ago, the claim existed, was later proven. Like that, we gave example right now about the universe, how they believe the universe was constant, one fixed size. Allah says, وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ, Surah Dhariyat. We are the ones expanding this universe. Scholars, scientists have said that every single thing exists from water. Everything. Allah says, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. We have created everything from water. And these are recent studies. Quran is mentioning 1400 years ago. Through the course of that 1400 years, Quran is constantly proving itself. Right? Obviously, you don't have knowledge about those scientific facts that are modern. You didn't have that 1400 years ago, but now when you have them, they are proving Quran correct. So now, those are in the things that we know. The Quran speaks about, for example, the expansion of the universe. Science speaks about the expansion of the universe. They're both speaking about the same thing. But if you put one to the test and the other, the Quran never changed its stance. So science, 100 years ago, stance turned out to be incorrect. Then they re-evaluated. The Quran took a stance 1450 years ago, and it was considered incorrect by science, but inevitably proved to be correct. If you take logic and probability, logic and philosophy and probability, which of the two has enough backing and support of probability of truth for the things that are not yet known? You would say, obviously, science. No. The scientists would say that because they don't want to believe. Because they don't want to even hold themselves accountable to philosophy, to logic. They don't want to believe. And this is a problem that Muslims are having today, is that you think your job is to convince people who don't want to believe. And then they hide behind straw arguments. They are weak arguments. One brother, I was selling a property, you guys know. I was selling property for this brother, and he came to me. MashaAllah, very, very religious brother. You know, he has a athar sujud. And when I would take him into properties, he had no shame, no taraddud, no hesitation. If salat time came, we're in a house for 15 minutes. Salat time is 2 hours. If salat time came, right there he's going to pray. He would not leave that house. Okay? And many times I'm like, brother, let's go outside, we'll pray. But he was not comfortable with that. No, salat time I pray. He used to have this little, you know, the Islamic Relief has that little square packet he would have like this. And he would go and he would look at me and say, it's salat time. I go, yeah, let's pray outside, 5 minutes. He goes, no, right now. And he would go talk to the agent, you know, the selling agent. And he would say to them, can I pray? Right away, can I pray right here? They say, yeah, okay. He would just drop the salah sajada, pray right there on the spot. His daughter, kafira. His daughter, mulhida, atheist. After showing him properties, brother has sujood, mu'athar of sujood. Not only that, he runs an entire orphanage in India, all on his own expense. Built it, runs it all on his own dollar. Okay, I've seen it. This man is this adherent to religion. He comes to me one day, he goes, I need to meet you somewhere, you know, this is something different than real estate, right? And so I go and I meet him and he says, I need you to talk to my daughter. And I go, why? Right? And he's embarrassed, right? Because he's seeing me and he's obviously himself very practicing man, mashallah. He says, my daughter, she spent 1 year in university abroad. This is his story. She came back to me and she said, I don't believe. And I try everything and I cannot get her. And I don't know what to do. Now I don't want to fight in my home and ruin my home, and it is what it is. She'll talk to you. So I said, okay. I met her at Taste of Lahore. The whole family came. I'm telling you the details of the story so you can appreciate it. And she sat down And she started asking me questions. Why this? Why this? Why this? Why this? Why does Islam say this? Why does Islam say that? She's just going off. And I said, what do you believe in? I believe in science. That I caught her right there. I said, you believe in science? I said, do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this? And exactly what I explained to you, I explained to her. I said, if you are as a logical person, I said, you're sitting right in front of me. As a logical person, if you are going to pick which one of these two you can rely on for something known as al-haqq al-mubin, the absolute truth. It's not the plausible truth, subjective truth, the absolute truth. Will you rely on something that you are agreeing it's incorrect at many times? Or will you rely on something I am telling you has always been correct? And she was quiet. But if I do that, I have to do this. And then it switched. See, this is called ad-tadlis wad-dajal wal-ghurur. Delusion in the minds of people. She came thinking she's extremely intelligent, beyond me. Beyond the Quran and belief of Quran. When I put her to the test of that belief, let's really compare who's more correct here. And she could not answer, she switched into, if I believe I have to do this and I'm not okay with that. I have to do this and I'm not okay with that. I don't want to wear hijab. These are the words. I don't want to wear hijab. I don't think that if I can't look at a man, these are her words, I can't look at a man and it's considered something sexual instantly. I can't have a male friend. I don't believe in that. I said, then don't lie. I told her right to her face. Don't lie to me and act like this is an intellectual discussion. This is your choice to not adhere to the rules of the absolute truth. You will prefer the possibility or the fact of being incorrect as long as you get to follow your desire. So you will pick falsehood knowing it is it is false as opposed to the truth. You will pick the falsehood because it suits your desire. And that's what you want. And I've had similar conversations with many individuals. And this is why when you understanding this, when you're learning this, you are understanding Quran. Those people who seek, Allah says in the Quran, like I mentioned to you, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ ابْتِغَاءَ الْفِتْنَةِ وَابْتِغَاءَ تَأْوِيلِهِ. Those people who have deviance in their heart, they are seeking and focusing on the parts of Islam that they can try to question. Why? In their heart is the problem. This is the problem. Their lack of adherence, their lack of discipline, their desire to follow themselves and their own wants as opposed to Allah and the Creator. So this logic, if it is applied incorrectly, it will take you anywhere and everywhere. Now, logic, there's only three. From my view, wallahi, maybe people will disagree. There are only three ways to apply your mind. Okay? I'm not talking about just gathering information to get a job. I'm talking about real existence here, okay? I'm not talking about 1 + 1 = 2. I'm talking about logic, philosophy, using and applying the mind can only be three things. Number one, you apply the mind to justify, to prove, or to support the desires and positions and personal views that you already have. So somebody who has an inclination to the same gender will look for a reason to philosophically and logically prove that love has no restriction. They will say that love is not, there's no harm in who I love. The belief, the view is already set. The logic is to support, they're applying their mind to support the view. Okay? This logic in Islam is haram, not permissible. You will get sin for using your mind this way. Using your mind in a way to justify your desire. An example of that, even in belief. You will see somebody will say that why did Allah, I've heard from Muslims, why is music haram when Allah gave them that voice? Ever heard somebody say something like that? Why would Allah give them that voice? Why is it haram to eat pig when Allah created it? So these are their personal views that they're trying to justify logically. This is haram to do, okay? And this is what the Christians have done with Isa alayhi salam. The second is getting information for practical conclusions. That one we already talked about. Basically, when you run 1 kilometer, you know that as you go, you're going to get slower. That's logic, right? You're applying based on practical conclusion. This is permissible. This is just general information. There's nothing you don't get rewarded for this. It's nothing special. The third one is the best. And that is applying the logic and the mind to support and protect the revelation. That is what the ulama have done. That is what Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah has done. Where these ulama, the Sahaba, Tabi'een, and all of the ulama tell today, and you have joined many programs of such people, they have used their minds to protect the pureness of deen, to preserve the view of Islam being haqq. This is, not only is it desirable, this is the way of Rusul, of prophets. This is what prophets did, alayhimu salatu wassalam. And out of all human beings, the one that does this is the most valuable, because they are considered alim. Allah says in the Quran, وَإِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءُ. It is only the knowledgeable people that fear Allah. In this verse of the Quran, before speaking about this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ أَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَخْرَجْنَا بِهِ ثَمَرَاتٍ مُخْتَلِفًا أَلْوَانُهَا. Allah talks about, look at this sky. Allah has brought you rain, and through the rain many different types of fruits. And Allah has brought you many types of mountains. And Allah has brought you many types of animals. Allah has brought you many types of everything. It is the ulama that fear Allah. Yani all of these things exist in variety. 5 minutes. All of these exist in variety, but the only ones that have value are the ones that fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the purpose of our intellect. And I will give you 2 examples to learn from the Prophet's life, Musa alayhi salam. Fir'aun, when the Pharaoh said, when Musa came with his, alayhi salam, came with Harun, and Allah sent them, He said, the both of you go and speak to Fir'aun the Pharaoh and tell him, send Bani Israel with us. Fir'aun, he said that, oh Musa, weren't you the one that killed the soul? Didn't you kill that guy? And didn't you live amongst us? Now you are acting so superior? And we raised you? Musa alayhi salam, these are 2 facts that he's saying. We raised you, and you killed someone accidentally. Musa alayhi salam in the Quran, he says, وَتِلْكَ, this is a virtue that you are trying to count against me, and عَبَّدْتَ بَنِي Israel. He used his logic to flip it back on Fir'aun. This is a blessing that you are trying to say that you raised me, but in reality, you are the one that enslaved Bani Israel, so you had to raise me. Yani this is all from your own hands. So Musa alayhi salam used his logic to throw it back at him. And like this, the famous story of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, rahimahullah ta'ala. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, he lived in the Khilafah of Ma'mun bin Harun Rashid. At that time, the Mu'tazila, which is a misguided sect of Islam in their beliefs, they had a strong impact on what the Muslim world was believing in. So this man named Al-Jahm bin Safwan, who was a Mu'tazili, was a part of these people, he said that the Quran is created. The Quran is the creation of Allah. And he basically required that everybody must believe in that to be a part of this ummah. So he used to beat ulama and torture them and take them out of their positions, all based on this. What do you believe about the Quran? So Al-Mu'tasim was a man at the time who was also a leader, governor. He heard about Imam bin Ahmad bin Hanbal. And Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal is saying that the Quran is not the creation of Allah, it is the word of Allah. And the word of Allah is not his creation. So Mu'tasim brings Imam Ahmad inside. And he says, Ahmad, Ya Aba Abdullah, ma ra'yuka fil Quran? He says, my position, what is your position in the Quran? He said, my position in the Quran is that it is the word of Allah. وَكَلَامُ اللَّهِ قَدِيمٌ وَلَيْسَ بِمَخْلُوقٍ. And the word of Allah is also Him, a part of Him. This is also not considered creation. And it is not creation, and if it was so, then in the Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would refer to it this way. Allah has not referred to it this way. Allah said, Yasin wal Quran al-Hakim. Allah says Al-Quran al-Hakim. Allah did not say Al-Quran makhluk. He starts giving these justifications. So Al-Mu'tasim, a man around him, says, kill him. Let's kill him right now. This man will cause a fitna. Everybody is going to believe in what he's saying. So Mu'tasim said, when Imam Ahmad came, I told him, say whatever you want. Don't fear, I will not kill you. I made an oath to not kill this man. And Imam Ahmad said to him, when he said, don't fear me, he said to him, Wallahi dakhaltu alayk wa ma fi qalbi dharratun min faza. I have come to you and I'm not even one speck scared of you. So he said, I already promised I won't kill him. So how am I going to kill him? They said, okay, put him in jail. So Imam Ahmad goes to jail that night, just one night. And Mu'tasim calls him the next day. He says, Ya Ahmad, كيف وجدت السجن الليلة? Last night, how did you find the prison? He says, Alhamdulillah bikhair. It was amazing, I enjoyed it. Except the one thing, very weird. Okay, so listen to the logic of Muhammad. He said, what is it? He goes, I woke up to pray Salatul Fajr. فَتَوَضَّعْتُ. I made wudu and I stood to pray 2 rak'ahs. In the first rak'ah, I read Al-Fatiha and the next surah. The second rak'ah, I told myself Fatiha and I wanted to read Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad. He says, but I couldn't read it. And I'm trying to read it. He goes, فَمَدَدْتُ بَصَرِي إِلَى زَاوِيَةِ السِّجْنِ. And so I looked to the corner and I saw Quran is there dead. And I realized that I could not read the Quran because Quran is dead. He said, what are you saying, Ya Ahmad? What do you mean Quran is dead? He said, don't you know that everything but Allah and every creation is dying? Every single thing will die except Allah Jalla wa Ala. He says, so the Quran will die. And then Al-Mu'tasim qaharana Ahmad. He said, Ahmad is right. How can we say the Quran will die? That means it's a makhluk. That position is incorrect. That debate, intellect, saved the ummah. That intellect saved the ummah. And he went through a lot of trial for this. So intellect, if used the correct way, is beneficial. And the last thing, I'll finish with this, is that information or using the mind, it is good when it is for a purpose. If you use it to debate without a good objective, yani people sometimes gain knowledge to debate with the ulama. This is disliked. In hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Ya bunay, la ta'allam al-ilm li tubahi bihi al-ulama. Don't learn knowledge so that you can go and debate and show off to these scholars. وَلَا تُمَارِ بِهِ السُّفَهَاء. And not so that you can disagree with foolish people and not mock them through it. And make them look like, oh look, see, you don't know anything. وَلَا تُرَائِ فِيهَا الْمَجَالِسِ فِي الْمَجَالِسِ. So, and not to show off in gatherings. Knowledge is only to gain hidayah, to spread hidayah, and preserve hidayah. Preserve haqq. Spread haqq, to bring haqq in your life, truth in your life, spread haqq, and also to preserve it. So whatever your intent was here, change that intent. Use your mind from today on for these three things, and then inshallah that will help you navigate your mind in every part of your life. You can turn these things into ajr, thawab. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Wa akhir da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
So we'll have a Q&A. Do you prefer some of the online questions or?
What does it matter to me?
One online, and then we'll open it up. The question is, I have a non-Muslim friend ask me, how can your religion be perfect when there's disagreements between different groups? Example, Maliki, Hanafi, madhabs. How to address this question?
That is the perfection. How is that the perfection? Because Islam, if it is too rigid, that there is no space for disagreement, then that is a sign of imperfection. This is why the usul of deen, the main parts of deen, are something that you cannot disagree in. But the furu', the smaller parts of religion, is something that can be debated in. Without it, then everything would be simple. Everybody's kafir. And it would become... So that is a sign of Islam's perfection. I think that's a question is coming from, it's either in or out. No, it's not like that. And that's a wrong view. Islam is perfect in its usul. And it's the usul of deen, in the main principles of deen. That does not have an effect on the furu', the secondary things. Any other questions?
So this is my question, not online. But you mentioned that we have intellect and wahi. So is there any certain points where intellect can understand to a certain degree the wahi, or the wahi always come up things where the intellect cannot get into?
Good question. Good question. This leads you into aqeedah, honestly. It leads you into aqeedah because wahi is aqeedah, belief. Okay, if I'm using words that you're not understanding, this is a little harder topic, so I'll try to translate in between. Al-aqeedah is our creed. Al-aqeedah is wahi. It is revelation, divine revelation. Ilm or aqal, mind, can become a part of that. Okay? Some scholars in the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah have taken a position which is well known as the Athari scholars, the Firqa Athariya. in which they state that the nas is everything. The text is everything. سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. We believe, we do not apply our mind. It is what it is, close the door. That is the Athari group. The second group is the Ilm al-Kalam, the Mutakallimin. The Mutakallimin are those, they have been referred to as Mutakallimin, meaning the ones that talk about this. They discuss the topic of God's existence, Allah's existence, and the things in between, what the revelation has said. Those two groups today in Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah are two types. The Maturidiyya and the Asha'ira. The Maturidiyya and the Asha'ira. I am a Maturidi in my belief, in my positions. The Athariyya have taken a position that we do not apply logic, whatever says we believe, that's it, close the door. The Mutakallimin, the Asha'ira and the Maturidiyya have said that we take all of that 100%. But we organize it in our creed according to the understanding of those things. This is called al-kalam. The Asha'ira have gone a little bit on the more of the ta'wil side. They have gone to explain everything, interpret everything. The Maturidiyya have said we will interpret, but we will always give preference to at-tafweed, which means we have an interpretation, but we know Allah knows, we don't know. Okay? So this stuff is maybe going to confuse you more, but I'll give you an example. Because these stuff are on YouTube and stuff, so I don't want you guys to get confused. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that He has a hand. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He has al-yad. Yadullah. Fawqa aydihim. Allah's hand is above them. Hand, literally, what you and I know is a hand. That's what you and I understand of a hand. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He has a hand, that is where the scholars now, what we believe of the hand, those are the three groups. The Athariyya, they will say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a physical hand, يعني يد حقيقية لا تشبه البصر ولا المخلوقات. This is the statement that they make. Allah says He has a physical hand, and thus He must have a hand, but we don't know what the hand is like. This is the qawl of Athariyya. The qawl of the Asha'ira, which is the group that is very strong in interpreting, they say, Allah says in the Quran, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There's nothing like Allah. So we cannot even say Allah has a hand the way you are saying it. So they say the yad of Allah is majazi. بِمَعْنَى الْمَجَازِي. It is metaphorical. They say hand means the help of Allah, the nusratullah. So they say when Allah says yadullah, Allah means nusratuhu, His help. Okay? The middle of this is the Maturidi position. The Maturidi position do not interpret and come to this conclusion. They do not say that it's nusra, it's help. It's in the meaning of help. Nor do they say it is physical. And it is only referred to something physical. The Maturidi position is a dead center position. They say that Allah has a hand. We know that the word hand can be physically meant in language and can be metaphorically meant. يعني اليد لها معنى حقيقي ومعنى مجازي. It has two meanings. If Allah meant one or the other or both, we have no problem. That is what you are talking about. The fact is, in the concept of usul, in the belief of Islam, every single one of them have used their mind. Even the Athari scholars with the claim that they have not used their mind, they have used their mind. Because when you use your mind by saying, I take the physical position, that is aqli. It's something understood. That I have preferred the physical meaning over the metaphorical meaning. So we say, like me, I personally don't believe in this view or this claim that some scholars have said, that the Atharis are not applying aql. Everyone is applying aql. Everyone in the usul of deen. But the conclusion are one of these three. So I don't think that anybody can, you cannot not apply it, nor can you claim that you are not applying it. Everyone is applying it. But your threshold of where you stop, that is the difference. Yeah, I know that's a little confusing. Everybody's like, I don't know what he's saying. I can see it in their faces. Yes.
Please, if you have already answered this, but I was wondering, how can we train our intellect to reflect how an ideal Muslim's intellect should be like?
First of all, that's a very practical question. I think it's from two points where you view it from. I think for like the regular Muslim, you are muqallid. You are muqallid, always. Yani there's no concept of you doing ijtihad. It's a false claim. For you to rectify your intellect, you need to stay with ulama that have the correct intellect. Then you can learn how intellect is applied. Okay? So in Aqidah, you're staying within the three main schools of thought. Okay? In fiqh, you are staying within the four madhabs. This is called taqleed, this is following. A regular Ammi person, to say that they can do it all on their own and, build an independent logic to apply in Islam, it's almost impossible. It's a false claim. So if as a regular Muslim you want to say, I'm going to apply my logic, I want to apply it the way Allah wants from me, then you do it that way. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. If you don't know how to apply, you stick to the people who know. So that is your hadd al-taklif. This is what your responsibility is. You don't need to go beyond that. One good example of this is riba. When you look at interest, when people ask you why interest is haram, they'll tell you because it's abusive. In it is dhulm, oppression. The reality is that is not the reason. And that is not the only reason. If riba becomes beneficial, it's still haram. And the Quran, when Quran spoke to the mushrikeen of Makkah when they were doing riba, Allah told them, أَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْءَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. Do profit and buying and selling, don't do riba. They said, إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَى. We are making $100 profit, you're making $100 riba, it's the same thing. Allah did not say the reason. Allah did not say this is why riba is haram as opposed to profit. Allah said one is halal, one is haram. Yani why? Because as time changes, riba also, the causes, the harms may also change. But the ruling does not change. So this is how our intellect guides us. What is a wisdom today in the command of Allah? That wisdom may be different tomorrow. The command will remain. And that's important to know. This is how we approach logic. So that we don't become attached to the mind where we say, okay, if riba becomes beneficial, now it's halal. Which people have tried to do. Right? So this is the main thing, is that we are the aql, the mind, is tabi' lil-nusus. It is muwafiq wa tabi' lil-nusus. It is following the text of Quran and Hadith, and it is harmonious with it. It is not conflicting it, nor is it ahead of it. Okay? So your mind, your job is to bring your mind and logic into a state where it is following the Quran and Hadith and harmonious with the teachings of it without contradiction. That's the goal. How do you do it? For a regular person, follow ulama.
This is an online question. It says, can you please summarize quickly what 3 ways you said to utilize our minds for?
3 ways to utilize the mind? Oh, the three, like the 3 rulings.
Yeah, the 3.
Okay. I thought you were talking about senses. Okay, the first one is the impermissible way, which is to use the mind to justify or prove or to justify or prove your personal views or your wants and desires. Like when somebody who wants to have like for example, if a man or a woman wants to have illicit relationships outside of nikah, he would say, she's taking my money anyways, right? Or she would say, it's the same thing. What's the difference? It's just a wali. Okay, if I give her $100 mahar, does it matter? You know, the logics. Say, if I give her $100, which would have been her mahar, and 2 people know that we're together, we're here, same thing. It's 2 witnesses. That's not how it works, right? So when the first one is when somebody is using their desire and mind to justify it. Second one is the general things, where you just use your mind for results or experiences or practical realities, like I'm running and at some point I'll get tired, right? Or my stomach is hurting, I gotta get it checked out. You're using your mind to give you a result that is a basic. It has nothing to do with religion and morals. The third one is using the mind to support the teachings of Quran, Hadith, and Revelation. That's the 3. Yeah, you had a question? No? Oh, he had a question. I feel bad. He asked. Yeah.
This is a bit off topic from what you discussed today.
Okay.
But how can we bring barakah back into our time? It feels like time just flying, days go on and on and on. We're already 19 days into this new year. That's just flying by. How can we add the barakah?
Barakah in time itself?
Yeah.
I'll tell you guys I got to speak to one of my teachers. I had a dream a couple days ago. And in my dream, my teacher said to me, I was doing a dhikr. And when I was doing the dhikr, he said, don't do that one. I said, okay, Shaykh, which one should I do? He said, read La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu min al-zalimin. And in my dream, he started explaining the benefits of that dhikr. And when I woke up and I was thinking about this dhikr, I put it to the test of the story of Yunus alayhi salam, where it came from. Yunus alayhi salam, he was swallowed by the whale. And the whale is massive. And when he's in the dark belly of the whale, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if he did not read this dhikr, لَلَبِثَ فِيهِ إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. Until Qiyamah he would stay in that belly. And from the statement, La ilaha illa ant subhanak inni kuntu min al-zalimin, you learn 3 things. First, al-iqrar. La ilaha illa ant. Recognizing, admitting Allah is the only one. Allah is the only solution. لا ملجأ من الله إلا إليه. There is no refuge from Allah, only to Him. Second, Subhanak. Allah, you're perfect. Your deen is perfect. Your belief is perfect. That is the way I need to go. So one is you recognize that you need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah is worthy of that worship. Second is you recognize the way Allah has said is perfect. Third, inni kuntu min al-zalimin. Any problem that you face today is your fault. So if you lack barakah in your time, it's your fault. If you feel like I'm not completing, it's your fault. And subhanAllah, in my dream, even though dreams are not like, they're not daleel, but they are, ulama have said, they can, because it is coming, it's teaching us the same dhikr of the Quran. So we can get some benefit from it. And here, alayhi salatu wasalam, many hadith talk about such things. In my dream, it was funny because my teacher said that he read an entire book because of the barakah of that dhikr in the dream. When we do these three things, like Yunus alayhi salam did, recognizing we need Allah, we are imperfect, and the perfection lies in deen, that is the solution to the barakah. If you want barakah in your time, you want barakah in your school, barakah in your life, in your family, in your relationship, in anything, do these three things. Practice Islam, recognize your weakness, and realize Allah is above it all. That's it. I think that's a good lesson. Simple. Yeah. We're good, right? Done? That's khalas. He puts his hand up when you say khalas. Look at this.